Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Reddit Stories. Many of you have been asking for longer videos, and today, your wish is granted. This video is packed with a collection of amazing stories that you won't want to miss. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy.
The clock blinked 11:47 p.m. on the dashboard of Ian's aging sedan as he pulled onto the lonely stretch of highway. The road stretched ahead like an endless ribbon of darkness, illuminated only by his feeble headlights. The night was unusually silent, the kind of silence that seemed to absorb even the hum of his engine. Ian adjusted his grip on the steering wheel, suppressing the unease creeping up his spine. It was just a drive, a necessary one. He had to reach his parents' house before morning. The road seemed alive, twisting and undulating in unnatural ways. The dense forest on either side leaned closer, the trees clawing at the edges of the asphalt like shadowy fingers. The radio crackled, though Ian hadn't touched it. A faint voice whispered through the static, too faint to decipher. He turned the dial, but it only resulted in louder, incoherent murmurs. Annoyed, he turned the radio off. A lone figure appeared in the beam of his headlights. Ian's heart leaped as he slammed the brakes. The tires squealed, and the car skidded to a halt. The figure didn't move. A man dressed in a dark coat, his face obscured by the brim of a wide hat. Ian rolled down his window slightly. "Do you need help?" he called, his voice trembling. The man didn't respond. Instead, he raised a pale hand and pointed down the road. Ian followed the direction of his finger, but saw only darkness. When he looked back, the man was gone. Ian's breathing quickened as he checked his rearview mirror. The road behind was empty. It must have been exhaustion playing tricks on him. Shaking his head, he pressed the gas pedal and continued. As he drove, he couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone. The trees seemed to close in tighter, their skeletal branches scratching at the car like they wanted in. The dashboard clock now read 12:17 a.m., though Ian swore he hadn't been driving long. The air grew thick, oppressive. Ian adjusted the air conditioning, but the stifling sensation persisted. Then he noticed it, a faint, rhythmic tapping coming from the roof of the car. Tap, tap, tap. He pulled over, his heart pounding. Grabbing his flashlight, he stepped out into the cold, his breath visible in the air. He shone the light over the roof, but there was nothing there. The tapping stopped. Returning to the car, Ian locked the doors and took a deep breath. He turned the key in the ignition, but the engine sputtered and died. The headlights flickered and went out, plunging him into complete darkness. "Come on," Ian muttered, trying the key again. The engine roared to life on the third attempt, but the headlights remained off. Reluctantly, he shifted into gear, the faint glow of the dashboard his only guide. The road ahead began to change. It no longer appeared paved, but seemed to be made of coarse, uneven dirt. Ian's tires crunched over gravel, and the car jolted over bumps. The forest grew denser, the trees now twisted and gnarled. His phone buzzed in the passenger seat. Grateful for a distraction, Ian picked it up. The screen displayed an unknown number. Hesitant, he answered. "Hello?" His voice echoed unnaturally through the car. A guttural whisper replied, "You shouldn't be here." Ian dropped the phone, his hands clammy. The call disconnected, and the screen went dark. Suddenly, a figure darted across the road. A woman in tattered clothes, her face hidden behind a curtain of matted hair. Ian swerved to avoid her, the car veering off the road and into a shallow ditch. He braced himself as the car came to a jarring stop. Panting, Ian looked around. The woman was nowhere to be seen. He stepped out, flashlight in hand, to assess the damage. The front bumper was dented, but the car seemed drivable. As he stood there, he heard it again. The tapping. This time, it came from inside the trunk. Ian froze, his flashlight trembling in his grip. Summoning his courage, he approached the back of the car. The tapping grew louder, more insistent. He unlocked the trunk and flung it open. It was empty. A sudden whisper brushed against his ear, sending him stumbling back. "Turn around," it hissed. Ian whipped around, but there was no one there. The forest seemed to hum with unseen energy, the shadows shifting unnaturally. He scrambled back into the car and slammed the door shut, his hands shaking as he started the engine. The road ahead had changed again. It was no longer dirt, but a glistening black surface that seemed to ripple like water. The clock now read 3:33 a.m. Ian drove on, the car feeling sluggish as if something was weighing it down. His eyes darted to the rearview mirror. For a split second, he saw a face, a pale, hollow-eyed figure staring back at him from the back seat. He swerved in panic, the car skidding wildly before coming to a stop. He turned around, but the back seat was empty. His breathing was ragged as he gripped the steering wheel. "Get it together," he muttered. The whispers returned, louder now, surrounding him. Words he couldn't understand filled the car, overlapping in a cacophony of dread. The air grew colder, and frost crept across the inside of the windshield. Then he saw it, a house at the end of the road, its windows glowing with a sickly yellow light. The road seemed to lead straight to it, though Ian didn't remember seeing it before. He stopped the car, unsure whether to continue. The whispers urged him forward, their tone almost pleading. Against his better judgment, Ian got out of the car and approached the house. The front door creaked open as he neared, revealing a dimly lit hallway. Stepping inside, he called out, "Hello?" His voice echoed unnaturally. The door slammed shut behind him. The lights flickered, revealing walls covered in strange symbols and crude drawings of faces. Faces that seemed to move when he looked away. A low growl emanated from the darkness ahead. Ian turned to leave, but the door was gone, replaced by a solid wall. The growl grew louder, accompanied by the sound of footsteps. A shadowy figure emerged, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. It raised a hand, and the symbols on the walls began to pulse. Ian screamed. When the police found his car the next morning, it was abandoned on the side of the highway. The engine was still running, but Ian was nowhere to be seen. The only clue was his phone, left on the passenger seat, its screen flashing a single message. "You shouldn't have stopped.